blessing of the Lord be upon you.
We bless you in the name of the Lord.
Thank you. Tonight we're going to look at some character study on Abraham. I don't think we've talked about him for a while. It's always good to go back and look at some of the characters people of faith from the Old Testament, try to glean some lessons from their lives. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 13. Yeah, it's a long reading, but it'll set us up for this evening's lesson. Moses writes, "Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And that's kind of the impetus that we'll go through this evening. But we're going to go on down, read the rest of this passage. Verse 4, "So Abram went," because faith always encompasses obedience. Always. "So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran. And they set out to go to the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place at Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward the Negev. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, his wife, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. So we got this transition period in the life of Abraham. The Lord appears to him. That's critical. The Lord appears to him. Yahweh comes to him, appears to him. He sees him, he talks with him like Adam and Eve walked and talked with the Lord in the Garden of Eden. The Lord gives him these instructions. He sets out, he does them for a while, but then because of the circumstances of life, a famine in the land, he leaves. There's no indication that he asked the Lord, hey, should I leave? Should I stay? If I stay, will you take care of me? He just decides to go on, and as soon as he decides to go on, well, what happens? He convinces his wife that we need to lie about certain things going on in our lives, our relationship as husband and wife. Tell them you're my sister, which apparently she was his half-sister, which back in those days didn't make a whole lot of difference. Now in Romans chapter 4 and verse 16, the Apostle Paul discusses Abraham being the father of the faithful. And faithful means people who act in faith. As the father of the faithful, there's going to be a broad spectrum of obedient action in his life, but we don't see it so far. The writer of the book of Hebrews includes Abraham as a hero of faith in chapter 11. But in Genesis 11 and 12, Moses begins a long historical account of the call and ministry of Abraham. Well, that's important to us, because in this epic saga, it's a journey, right? It's not just a journey, it's a burdened kind of journey. It's a hard journey. It's kind of like what, the Iliad and the Odyssey, that it's a journey that's got a lot of twists and turns and things going on. It's not the easiest journey that a person would take. It's a saga. But in that we learn how Abram the Hebrew becomes Abraham, the father of the faithful. So let's begin by looking at, first of all, 3 trials of faith to which Abraham was subjected. After that, we'll look at another trial that comes along because of those first 3, and then we'll just draw some lessons from it. Abraham's 3 trials of faith. First trial was a test of discipleship, and that discipleship is following the Lord's instructions. Do what the Lord says. And 12, 1 through 4, and then verse 10, now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. He's going to make a great nation of him, but at that time he has no children. All the families of the earth will be blessed, just not his family. So, verse 4, Abraham went as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. But notice, if you go back and read chapter 11, it's not until his father passes away that he leaves. He goes to the land of Canaan. Does he know where he's going? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Now, verse 10, now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. So he was told to leave one of the most modern cities of his time to go to a country that he knew very little about. He may have heard that, hey, there's a land over there called Canaan. But there doesn't seem to be any understanding from the scriptures that he knew about that place, that he knew about the cultures or anything. He lived in Ur of the Chaldees. That was over closer to what we know as Babylon in the Old Testament and Iraq today. But the Lord said it was there. And because the Lord said it was there and the Lord would give it to him and his descendants especially, Abraham left and he went there eventually. It took time, but he got there. Abraham failed to obey the Lord outright, though, and only did so when forced by providence. He needed to go. So, here's the lesson for us. Don't confuse faith with taking what seems to be the easy way out, or being forced to do something. What do you mean by that, Fred? Well, I've often heard men who, like in the eldership, all right, a congregation is getting ready to appoint elders. And, well, do you have faithful children? Well, my children were always faithful when they were in my household, when they were growing up. Well, children are often considered faithful when their parents are forcing them to attend services. Right?
Absolutely.
And, you know, there's a lot of things that that go into that. Like, well, if you don't go to services, there's going to be punishment. If you don't go, you might get grounded. If you don't go, you don't get to go to the ball games. You don't go, you don't get this, whatever. So there, they go to church, but they go to services, but is their heart in it? And then what happens when they get out of their father's household? I raised them right, but see, listen, there are a multitude of things that we might do, not because we want to, but because that's the easy thing to do. That's the easy way out. I really don't want to do that, but you know, the Lord said to do it, so I'll do it. That's not good, is it? We got to do things with a heart that says, I want to do what the Lord says to do. I want to be obedient. I want to be His child. So that's just kind of one of those things that, you know, here's this trial of faith. Abram, are you a disciple of the Lord in that sense in the Old Testament? Well, yeah, I've done what the Lord said to do. Well, it took you a long time to get to it, and then when you got to it, you let circumstances of life keep you from fully doing what I told you to do, the Lord would say to him. So, you know, there's a lesson for us in that. The second trial came after God promised Abram a son through Sarah in Genesis chapter 15. In Genesis 16, verse 3, So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, it takes 10 years of training, 10 years of ups and downs, 10 years of this saga. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abraham, her husband, as a wife. What's Sarai doing here? Well, when we read the text, we understand what's going on here. Abram is kind of concerned. It's been 10 years. I'm now 85 years old. The Lord promised me a child, a descendant, and I haven't got one yet, Sarai. What's the matter with you? You know, and that's the logical explanation, isn't it? What's the matter with you, Sarai? You know, I'm doing all I can do. What's the matter with you? But so Sarai suggests this. I'll give you my handmaid. Hey, this is what the Egyptians do. And she's Egyptian. Maybe Hagar's the one who came up with this idea first. Or maybe this is what the Canaanites that we live among do. Hey, this is a legal thing. This may not be a religious thing, but this is a legal thing, a secular thing. So, hey, he takes Hagar as a second wife, has a son by the name of Ishmael. Is there a problem with that? Yes, there is. Because it's not truly obeying the Lord. Now, after 10 years of these trials, these many trials going on, here's this bigger trial of faith. Abraham, as a husband and spiritual leader of his house, failed. That's the only way to put it. He failed. In trying to keep peace in his home, he allowed chaos and confusion to rule. Chaos and confusion. Even some doubt to throw in there. He didn't really like the idea, but just to keep Sarai happy, we'll do this. We'll try it this way. And it didn't work. We know the story, right? How that it caused friction between Sarai and Hagar, because Hagar was mocking Sarai and mocking Isaac later on when Sarai does have a child. See, it was a mistake to not trust in the Lord. It was a mistake not to ask the Lord, Lord, is this the right thing to do? And here's a man who the Lord was coming to personally and giving these instructions to, but yet he was going his own way. So there was, again, chaos and confusion of doubt in his household. Third trial came when the confusion and chaos in Abram's home reached its pinnacle, and Ishmael was forced out of the home. Well, one of these two kids has to go. Sarai now says it's got to be Ishmael. Who's wearing the pants in that family? Now, listen, remember back in those days, it was the women who wore the pants and the men wore the skirts, the robes. Right? Right? So we can't use that expression biblically. But she was the boss at home, not Abram. Genesis 21, verses 10 through 13. So she said to Abraham, now his name has been changed to Abraham because Isaac is there. Cast out the slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. See, she doesn't even say your son, it's her son. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. Well, that was Ishmael, right? But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. The Lord told Abraham to obey Sarah. He was going to anyway. And if we fail to take the right path, the Lord will often tell us to go ahead on the bad path. Okay? So, if there's a child and the child likes to try to put pennies in the electrical outlet, and we keep telling them, no, don't do it, no, don't do it, no, don't do it. Eventually we get tired of telling them, no, don't do it. We say, okay, go ahead. We give them permission, right? But to do what? To teach them a lesson. Now, we may not do it that way. We may not go to that extreme. But you know, in certain circumstances in life, we allow them to make a bad decision. So in that making that bad decision, they learn a valuable lesson, and we can correct them to put them back on the right path. And that's what the Lord was doing here. But listen, at this point, Ishmael was probably about 16 years old. He was 13 years older than Isaac. It wasn't like he was sending a 7-year-old out into the wilderness with his mother. At that point, typically, young men that age already had a wife and kids. So he was spoiled somewhat, wasn't he? As we know the story. The Lord had plans for him. Go ahead, send him out. I know he's your son. I'll take care of him. Go ahead and do what she has said to do, because Isaac is the one. Isaac is the child of promise. So, listen, Abraham failed his son Ishmael. And because of this, the Lord was going to bring a fourth and greater test of faith on Abraham. So we've looked at 3 tests, right? And that's what I said. There are 3 tests there. The fourth one would come because of these. So the cumulative effect of those 3, the discipleship, and then, what was going on in his household, him being a leader. See, discipleship leads to leadership, which leads to, hey, what's going on in your realm of leadership, he's failed faith tests. Does that make sense? Fourth test of Abraham's faith incorporates all elements of former tests: discipleship, obedience to the Lord, leading his household, and bringing up children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. That's just not a New Testament principle. That was an Old Testament principle. Go back and read the book of Deuteronomy especially. So, Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 and 2. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. He, the Lord, said, Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Now, that's a test of faith, isn't it? That's big, because all those Canaanites, all those people in the land who had those pagan religions, they'd do that sort of thing. They would offer their children. Now at this time, Isaac's getting to be about 13, 14, 15 years old. He's not a little pup. He's getting to be a big dog himself. Abraham did what the Lord said to do in spite of the implications. Abraham prepared and went to Mount Moriah just as God told him to do. There was no questioning, no excuses, no waiting and hope the Lord would change his mind. You know, maybe if I stall a couple of days, the Lord will change his mind. Abraham did not ask his wife if it was all right with her to do this. Sarah, the Lord told me to take Isaac up to Mount Moriah and offer him as a burnt sacrifice. Is that all right with you? May as well ask her if it's all right to go fishing, right? Or go play golf. Yeah, go ahead, but you know this needs to be done, and that needs to be done, and that, and by the way, that's your only son. What's the matter with you, Abraham? Maybe Abraham's getting to the point where he's not going to listen to his wife so much. The Lord had not made a covenant with Sarah, but he made a covenant with Abraham. We individually today must enter into a covenant relationship with the Lord. Doesn't matter what our spouses say. Oh, it affects us, right? It affects our lives, but we enter into a covenant with the Lord. He expects us to keep that covenant. If my wife doesn't like it, too bad. If I don't like it for her, too bad. She's got to keep it. I've got to keep it. We individually must enter into that covenant relationship. Today, it's through Jesus Christ and the new covenant. According to Acts chapter 4, verse 12, we must obey the Lord rather than people, men or women. Acts chapter 5, verse 29, we have to obey the Lord. Well, Abraham believed that what the Lord asked him to do was the best thing for his son. Now that's a strange thing. Couldn't see how to be the best thing for him. Couldn't see how to be the best thing for Sarah. The Lord's asking me to do this. It must be the best thing for Isaac. You know, the book of Hebrews tells us that's the case. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 17 through 18, by faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac And he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. But it also tells us in the scriptures that Abraham believed that if he did that, the Lord would perform a resurrection. How much was Isaac blessed by going through this event with his father? I want you to think about that for a moment. How much was Isaac blessed by going through this event with his father? How much was Isaac, how do I want to put this? How much was Isaac's faith hindered in his father's house when he saw what his father and his mother were doing and how they treated Ishmael? And when he heard the stories of how they treated Hagar and Ishmael, and he heard about the lies that were told when they'd gone down to Egypt, and all those various things. And Abraham said, I'm a man of God. But Isaac, seeing it day by day, these things happening, how much did that build faith in Isaac toward the Lord? But seeing his father's reaction, or seeing the Lord's reaction to Abraham's faith, and sharing in the rejoicing of his father on the 3-day journey home, because he obeyed the Lord, at least set to obey the Lord, took Isaac up on that mountain, took the wood, laid it out, tied up Isaac, took the knife and was ready to plunge it in him so he could make a burnt offering of him. Isaac, probably being old enough, big enough, strong enough to overcome his father, was submissive to his father. But how much was his faith bolstered when he saw his father obeying the Lord and being obedient, being faithful, even in that circumstance? How much are our children's? How much is their faith bolstered when they see us obeying the Lord on a day-to-day basis? That's important, isn't it? Our faith passed on to them. When they see us not being faithful, not being obedient, what does that do to them? It doesn't build them up. How much easier will it be for our children to live by faith when they see us living by faith? How differently will we relate to our children if we truly believe there is a God, a resurrection, and a judgment day, and that their eternal destiny may depend on our faith and obedience to God? See, those are important things for us, lessons for us, that right there they are in the life of Abraham. So there are valuable lessons. We've talked about a few there from the life of Abraham that can help us understand our relationship with God. But there's Abraham who moves from Abram, exalted father, to Abraham, father of a multitude. That's what the names mean. Exalted father, Abram, but now he's going to be Abraham, father of a multitude. But to get from one to the other, he's got to become faithful. Abraham consistently failed in fully obeying God for a long period of time. But he's the father of the faithful. So what does that tell us? No one's perfect. It takes a lot of training to develop personal faith pleasing to the Lord. And again, Luke chapter 6 and verse 40, the disciple's not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. When we're fully trained, we'll be like Jesus. That's important in our lives. Secondly, the Lord did not give up on Abraham, but continued to reveal to him things that were going on, encourage him, and yes, chastise him when necessary. Right? Think back on the life of Abraham. How many times was he chastised? How many bad things happened in Abraham's life? Quite a few. That's the Lord trying to get his attention. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5 through 6. And have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him, for the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and chastises every son whom he receives. Yes. You know, I learn a whole lot more making mistakes than I do living the right way, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that didn't come out right. I learned a lot by making mistakes. I think a lot of us do. The Lord didn't give up on Abraham. Abraham did not give up on the Lord. He did not understand everything the Lord said, but he never stopped believing the Lord's promises. He believed the promises. He just didn't know that it's like in the New Testament, it's like Peter talking about, hey, don't grow weary. Well, Paul says don't grow weary, but Peter says it in a different way. You know, the promises are there. They're coming, but don't give up. They're out there. You've got to have that hope. John chapter 8, verse 31 through 32, Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, you know the truth will set you free. Well, what do we do when God promises us something, but then it doesn't look like it's coming right then? Well, the Lord hasn't lied about it. It's coming. It's going to be on his time frame. His time frame. And in all of our trials of life, the Lord expects us to eventually prove ourselves to be a people of faith. I got Hebrews 11:6 up there. We'll get to it in a minute. But there's another passage that talks where Jesus says, when the Lord comes, will he find faith on the earth? If the Lord comes back tonight, will he find faith? Will he find us faithful? Will he find a bunch faithful? That's important. Why is it important? Hebrews 11:6. Without faith it is impossible to please him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. No reward if we don't seek him, but we've got to seek him through faith. So, conclusion. The greatest heroes of faith are people who take their failures, learn and turn, and by trusting and obeying the Lord, see a great value added to their lives. Abraham failed many times, but Abraham did not compound his failures by losing faith. He allowed those failures to correct him, send him on the right way. The Lord will test us and try us, not condemn us, but prove and improve us if we will let him. Do we have the mindset that will allow us to grow in faith despite our trials and our failures? That's the key. Don't give up. Well, I hope you enjoy that lesson. That's, you know, some of those characters, I like characters, stories, characters. Looking at the characters in the Old Testament and see they're people just like us. Just like us. their hearers. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have a need, let your request be made known as we stand and sing the invitation song.